Hey, before I start this video, I just feel the need to reiterate the fact that I am an adult, and I intend for this channel to be 13 plus. Guys, I have seen the YouTube analytics. I know no one over the age of 25 is watching these videos. Now, obviously, I don't intend to discuss any overly mature topics, but this is just a boundary I have, and I'm asking you to respect that. Thank you. Anyways, let's begin. So Forsaken as a fandom is actually super fun because all these characters are pretty much blank templates for whatever kind of dynamic or character archetype that you want. Yes, there is absolutely characterization that can be gleaned from their little dialogue prompts and lore tidbits, but frankly, it's all pretty surface level. I feel like Forsaken has a similar problem like Warrior Cats had, or still has, I don't know, I haven't read a Warrior Cats book in like 7 years. Where instead of having a concrete series bible, lore can just be canonized from any random comment made in a no longer accessible channel in the Forsaken Discord server, or random deleted tweet. But honestly, I can't blame the devs for this. I imagine managing this game and real life obligations is just extremely overwhelming, especially considering I think most of the devs are still in high school. The only one I know as an adult is, Hitoko, I think? I don't know. I'm pretty sure most of these people are either my age or like way younger, and I doubt any of them planned for the game to get as big as it did, or were ready to handle that kind of pressure. It's just something I've noticed and think about whenever people argue over canon information, when so much of the lore and characterization is either left up to interpretation or just straight up vague. Basically what I'm trying to get at here is Forsaken is a game with a very loose canon. But I don't think that's a bad thing, nor do I think it implies anything negative about the devs. Frankly, lore and world building really shouldn't be the main priority in managing an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game. So because of this, the fandom essentially serves to fill that gap. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how to format this video, so I'll just talk about a handful of my favorite headcanons and we will see where the night takes us. Let's start with one of my favorite Forsaken topics, how 1x came to be and how Telman fell. One of the most interesting ones I've ever heard is the Telman split headcanon. Basically, the idea is that Telman is just an entirely separate entity, and at some point he's split down the middle to become Shedletsky and 1x. Honestly, I love this one. It just fully grabs me by the lapels. The idea of 1x and Shedletsky quite literally being cut from the same cloth makes for a really interesting dynamic. I know in other media with 1x he is pretty commonly described as manifesting from Shedletsky in some way, but with this headcanon specifically it places them on a pretty even playing field, which I really like for their dynamic. But on the other hand, we have the corrupted crown headcanon. As the headcanon goes, Telman is given a crown, whichever means he comes into possession of it depends entirely on the headcanon. 1x is gifted the crown, is corrupted by the negativity, and betrays and kills Telman, who then rebirths and then goes into exile. This headcanon has a lot of wiggle room for adding in just whatever extras you want. Some headcanons make Shedletsky a kind of father figure to 1x, and even expand upon that by making him emotionally neglectful and abusive, further adding that fuel to the fire that leads to 1x's betrayal. If you know me, you know I absolutely live for headcanons like this. I just really love the idea of this adorable little headstrong 1x completely attached to the hip of Telman and desperate for his attention, and Telman's just entirely cold and detached. He just does not care. He does not want this thing around him. Although I will say I'm kind of on the fence about the crown absorbing all of Telman's negative emotions, because that would mean that his transition into Shedletsky happens before he's betrayed, and I prefer to see the rebirth as a kind of complete 180. Also, there's kind of a horrific aspect that can be gleaned from Telman just completely losing all negative emotions, like just entirely being unable to mourn or reflect on anything that happened with 1x. I'm sure there's a healthy balance that can be reached with this part, I just don't know where it is. Moving on, let's talk about Time and Azur. If you know anything about me, or have even just taken a cursory glance at this channel, you'll know that these are the characters of all time to me. Personally, honestly, I don't love how a lot of the fandom reads the two of them, so I'm sort of just using this as a little podium to spread my personal Time and Azur propaganda. If you would, please, please let me talk about them, please. I don't even know if I'm going to use this take because I bumped the door of my closet. So on the subject of how the two of them came to be a part of the Spawnism cult, I have two headcanons that I just generally lean towards at any given time. First one is just the idea of both of them being manipulated into the cult while they were in their early 20s. I'm imagining both Time and Azur were homeless and vulnerable, and a Spawnism member offered room and board for the two of them, provided they just follow a few house rules. hard cut to them realizing those little rules were severely downplayed, and they have actually joined a cult. I imagine Two-Time would have joined about a month before Azur, and then a cult member assigns Azur to a room with Two-Time to help them settle in, and then also artificially create a bond between the two of them so that they're more incentivized to stay for the other, which is just exactly what happens. But also, I really do love the idea of the two of them being born into the cult. In this headcanon, the cult would be taking place in an extremely isolated rural village. Everything about the cult's way of life and just fully giving themselves to the religion, being normalized to them since birth, is just very interesting to me. I want to gnaw on these two like chew toys. This one I also particularly like because it reminds me of Shadowheart and her relationship to the Sharan cult. I like that. I like Two-Time's parallels to Act 1 Shadowheart. But in both headcanons, I really love the idea of Azur planning to escape with Two-Time. I imagine he would be slowly finding ways to save and hide money because they're not allowed to keep money in personal possessions, and he's just slowly building up funds for a bus to get out of there, and he's just so excited to escape with Two-Time, and Two-Time is pretending to match their excitements, but they just have so many doubts and reservations, and actually, is the cult even that bad to begin with? Slowly, their mental health declines as the cult just completely has them under their control. I imagine the leader is slowly giving Two-Time more privileges and special treatments and making them their second-in-command. And on the night Azur planned to leave with Two-Time, they burn their bus ticket, and when Azur confronts them, they kill them. I imagine there's a kind of Mirai Nikki Gasai Yuno aspect to it. Like, Two-Time did fully believe Azur would come back and everything would be right and normal. And man, what a fun and terrible AU that would be, goddamn. And is just completely distraught and their entire worldview shattered. I think about these characters a lot. I think about these characters the normal amount. I need to know. I need to know about their lives. I need to know why the two of them were vulnerable enough to be indoctrinated into a cult. I need to know if they had families that were worried about them. Please, I need— Sorry, I'm normal. No, I'm normal, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm normal. Anyways, Chance and Mafioso. Yes, this is about Double Fedora. No, I'm not sorry. As I feel like I've adequately showcased in my untraumatizing Forsaken characters videos, none of these people are doing okay, and that's gonna lead to a lot of unhealthy relationships. Basically, my headcanon is that Chance and Mafioso are emotionally codependent on each other. I love Double Fedora as a ship where the two of them just barely tolerate each other. They have chemistry and knew each other pre-Forsaken. Chance broke Mafioso's heart and cheated him out of all that money, and now they sort of just humor each other's old feelings for each other because the isolation's really starting to get to them, but they're mocking and insulting each other the whole time. These two can't stand each other, but even staying by your least favorite person is better than nothing. I personally like to believe the killers are very interaction and touch starved, and generally don't talk to each other, or do anything with each other, whereas Chance is generally cordial with the rest of the survivors, but it's all very surface level co-worker-esque relationships. They really know nothing about him, and they're not a great substitute in the face of an old flame/enemy. Honestly, imagine it in terms of I have no mouth and I must scream. Found family, but they hate each other. Found family, but it's just because they're all the other has. Found family, but it's terrible. This is another one I brought up in my untraumatizing Forsaken videos, but just the horror of Cool Kid being stuck as a perpetual child. No one talks about that. This isn't even necessarily a headcanon because it is technically a part of his character, but all the extra angst I throw onto it is technically headcanon. Cool Kid is sort of just frozen in time as a 10-year-old, which is already pretty horrific, but even more so considering the environment he lives in. He's not allowed to have a worldview about his circumstances that extend beyond a 10-year-old's worldview. He's not allowed to properly understand all the nuances of his and his dad's relationship. He's not even allowed to know that he's killing people. Very much reminds me of Claudia from Interview with the Vampire. I love horror surrounding immortality, but even beyond that, 007 just isn't going to be able to see his son grow up. He's never going to be able to see his son mature and watch their relationship dynamic change. That's genuinely devastating. Actually, here's another 007 and Cool Kid one that I really like. The different headcanons over what kind of a father 007 was. I spent a lot of time in the Homestuck fandom, so for me this one's very reminiscent of the shift in the fandom over people realizing that Bro Strider was an abusive father and Dave's living situation was just awful. Not saying that's necessarily the case with 007, but I really like when people headcanon a lot of nuance in their relationship. Like, he loves his son, but how good of a job does he really do with raising him, especially in the beginning, especially considering he's coming down from being Noli's partner in crime. I don't know, I like musing on this. This one's for you, Kelly. The one I have for Elliot is just, I think he's a little insane, as a treat. He definitely snaps every so often and then pretends it totally didn't happen. I feel him. I worked as a busboy for a diner. It was awful. Also, I've seen people argue over whether Elliot is a minimum wage employee living paycheck to paycheck or a nepo baby. I like the first one, but also the latter is funny because imagine Elliot's just pulling a nickel and dimed situation, but for all the wrong reasons. Like, imagine he is just fully so rich he never has to work a day in his life, but he's just cosplaying being a minimum wage employee for the experience. What if Elliot was that terrible? I don't know. Makes me giggle. The final one is a pretty general one, but I feel like all of the survivors are just absolutely hiding all of their baggage from each other. They are all the epitome of Little White Lies by Voltaire. Like, I imagine finding out that Jane Doe was John Doe's wife must have been crazy. I feel like she'd either casually bring it up at some point, or John Doe says something, and everyone just turns to her like, huh? Girl, what? People finding out 007 is Cool Kid's dad, they're just absolutely standing there with their jaws glued to the floor. I want to focus on 2 times specifically though. I know they must just absolutely not want to allow themselves any kind of positive relationships. They will keep the most surface level coworker acquaintanceships with the rest of the survivors, all while feeling guilt so terrible they feel like their brain will split in 2. I think the best comparison I can imagine is Sunny from Amori. But hey, that's all the headcanons I have here for you all today. Feel free to comment down some of your favorites or ones you've personally come up with. I love reading about different headcanons, and maybe I'll adopt some of them into how I choose to write for these characters. Anyways, thanks for watching, but I also want to take a second to mention the fact that I have an Etsy shop that I'm selling Forsaken stickers on. I plan to make some more designs, but only if these 2 do well, so if you want to support the channel and what I do, maybe check out some of the stickers. Have a nice day, stay silly, stay cringe, stay free, bye!